Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And during this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I have family law attorney Sarah Avraham of the Law Office of Sarah Avraham, calling in all the way from good old sunny Atlanta, Georgia. Now, Sarah, who has a wealth of experience in the area of family law, will be talking to you today about a very interesting topic. Sarah's here to discuss divorce in the world of alternative lifestyles. So, if you are one of the increasing amounts of individuals in the Atlanta, Georgia area who can relate to today's topic, you might want to down tools, log out of Facebook, switch off Twitter, Instagram, or anything else that you happen to be doing, and you might even want to grab a notepad and pen as we listen in to what Sarah has to share with us today. So with that said, let's not keep her waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, and good afternoon, evening, or morning to whomever's listening.
Okay, fantastic. We're happy to have you on the show as well, Sarah. So let's get started. Our first question for the show today is, can you just briefly describe the kinds of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they reach out to you for your help?
I absolutely can. That is a very broad question, and I will do my best to answer it in the time allotted. The people that I serve, I tell people all the time that I do not have a area of law in which I specify, but more like a demographic of people. And so this is a very good question. And the people that I serve are in alternative lifestyles, as you have mentioned, and to be more specific with that, what that means or what that looks like is that it's people who are in the LGBTQI alternative lifestyle, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, etc., all of the people that are included under that umbrella. I also serve people that identify themselves as polyamorous, which that means they have more than the traditional two partners that are in their relationships, or people that are in more esoteric practices in their bedroom. One would describe as the BDSM lifestyle. So if you've seen the movie 50 Shades of Grey, people who do that. Right. And while some people may think that, how is that significant? It can become very significant whenever it comes to family law. Piggybacking on the next question, the kinds of situation they find themselves in. Well, before marriage equality was legal, people who were same-gendered in their relationships, they came to me all the time for domestic partnership type papers because they didn't have the marriages, the rights that are enumerated under marriage. And so they wanted me to try to enforce that. Now they come to me for things still. And this happens still, even in Atlanta, a very liberal city whenever it comes to people in the LGBT community, people who have lost their jobs, people who have lost a place to live or have been discriminated against as a result of being in a same-gendered relationship, or who are transgendered, or that any of them that fall under the other umbrellas. As far as specifically divorce and family law, they can now get married and they can now get divorced. And so there are a lot of unique laws that challenge people of same gender in divorcing whenever it comes to divorcing, because this is actually something I was speaking on with a few professionals at the Georgia Bar last December at a continuing legal education class, is that, there were some people who were married outside of the state of Georgia before it became illegal, and then they moved here. Well, then when does the date of marriage start in regards to the acquisition of assets and liabilities? That's a big one. That's a huge one. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you may have heard about the case that was in Alabama where there were two women who were married in the state of Georgia, adopted a child, one of the women had a biological child, and then her wife actually created or actually enacted a third-party adoption so that she could be the child's second parent. But then they moved to Alabama, got a divorce or pursued divorce in Alabama. And because Alabama at the time didn't recognize adoptions by same-gendered people, then they were saying that the woman who gave birth to the child was the only rightful parent. And then the second parent that had done the third-party adoption had no rights. Of course, that case has resolved itself, and the Supreme Court stepped in and said, yes, she has rights, so make this happen. But for, the time it took for it to get to the Supreme Court, that was an issue. So those are the sort of situations that I find in the LGBT community. In regards to in the polyamorous world, of course, that has a lot of complications. And I say all the time that now that same-gendered marriage is now legal, the next logical iteration for me is more than one partner marriage, because they face the same sort of discrimination or similar discrimination and similar issues that the LGBT community did whenever it came to marriage, because, say you have a man and a wife. Okay, they have a girlfriend. We'll say the girlfriend gets pregnant by the husband. So where do all the parental rights fall under that? And if this is a happy situation and all three of the partners are in it to win it, so to speak, for the rest of their lives, how do you ensure that both the husband and the wife have maybe not equal but similar parenting rights to this child as the woman who is carrying it? Because in Georgia, whenever you're married, of course, the man and the wife are presumed to be the parents. The father is imputed to be the parent of any child that's conceived. Well, what happens to someone where he is conceived out of wedlock? Well, then she has to legitimate him as a father and go through all of the paperwork in order to make that happen. But that still leaves the wife out in the cold. And so these are the sort of things that I face in regards to that demographic. And in regards to the demographic in the BDSM, bondage, discipline, sadism, masochism world, a lot of people, there are traditional couples that are married, male and female. There's also lesbian couples, gay couples that are married. And whenever it comes time for divorce, a lot of times they want to take what happened in the privacy of their bedroom and try to drag it through the courts, especially whenever they're fighting for custody of children. I cannot tell you the number of cases that I have had where that was the case. And so three very unique demographics, and sometimes there's overlap. Sometimes you have a BDSM couple that, are two lesbians that practice BDSM and had a girlfriend, Okay. And so there's a lot of overlap. There's also a lot of individual and unique battles to be fought by the three demographics as well.
Well, Sarah, I have to say, I got to say, first of all, a big thank you to the research team for bringing you on to the show to speak about this topic, the topic of divorce in the world of alternative lifestyles. Because for one thing, this is just opening up my own mind. I mean, I've interviewed, I think, in this divorce series of Let's Talk Divorce, I think at this stage, 59 divorce attorneys or coaches or collaborators, whatever the case may be. But this is the first time I'm speaking to somebody who's come onto the show to share some insights about alternative divorce in the world of alternative lifestyles. And I find this mind blowing. So I'm so happy that you've come onto the show to share your insights with our listeners. So with that said then, Sarah, and keeping in mind that anything that you share from this point on today is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of sharing information. Now, while you're out there working with all of these people who live this alternative lifestyle, I'm sure that when they come to you, they come with information that they believe to be true. Maybe they've heard it from a friend, a colleague, or maybe they've done some research on Google and they found information and they believe that to be true. However, when they lay it on the table in front of you or when they speak with you, you know this is just a myth. It's a misconception. So of all of those untruths that you come across on a day-to-day basis, Sarah, what's the most common misconception that you come across while you're out there helping your clients?
That is a very easy question to answer. and I'll go back to a moment to the thanks that you give me. I thank you for the opportunity, because I went to law school exclusively with this demographic, these groups of people in mind to serve, and this is 95% of my clientele. And so I'm also very happy to be discussing this with all of your folks in the listening audience today. But the most common misconception surrounding alternative lifestyles whenever it comes to divorce is that who it is and what it is these people are and what they do, that in the grand scheme of things, it makes two whoies whether or not they do it. For example, there's a lot of misconceptions that people think, oh, well, two women or two men two mommies, two daddies cannot properly raise a child correctly. Well, as we've seen from research and decades of observation, we know that's not true. Okay. But there are, unfortunately, some judges and some juries out there that still believe that, depending on how conservative you are, in your beliefs and where you live. Yes, I practice. My practice is in Atlanta, but I've practiced all over Georgia. And you would be surprised at some of the ignorance, so to speak, that I've run into. Another example is in the polyamorous world. Well, okay, you may have a man and a wife, or a husband and wife, but then you have a girlfriend or another couple. And the misconception there is, again, that, and it is centered around children a lot, but it's also the success level of a relationship. That's also something that's addressed. A lot of people, especially in the polyamorous community, get the prejudice against them that they think that just because they love more than one person, that somehow their loyalties are divided, or they don't have the time to devote to their primary partners or their secondary, tertiary partners. And therefore, in this sort of environment, where's the love left for the children? And of course, their retort to that is, and I've seen it personally myself, and in a lot of situations, is that, like the expression on the Sister Wives show, love is to be multiplied, not divided. And so I have found that a lot of people who have multiple parents raising children, the children are never, they're never left alone. They don't ever feel abandoned. They always know that someone will be there for them. And so that is how I present that if I ever have to go to court or speak to opposing counsel about a particular case. And then in the BDSM world, again, huge misconception. And whenever clients come to me, they are terrified about this. They say, well, I like a little slap and tickle, how is this going to affect custody? And I have seen the progress myself over the years that I have practiced, where judges or guardian ad litems have said, I had a guardian ad litem tell me this literally just the other day. We found out that, they're into all of this. And I said, yes, I know. Oh, well, in my opinion, it doesn't make a difference as long as the kids don't see it. I said, pretty much. And that's pretty much the rules that sex doesn't matter in general, as far as what the husband and wife does or the man and the woman does, as long as the kids don't see it, right? And he said, oh, yeah, I've never thought about that. Yeah, I guess so. And fortunately, that's the attitude that's becoming more pervasive, and in that particular community, they like to complain about the movie 50 Shades of Grey and how inaccurate it was and all of these criticisms. And I just smile and look at them and I say, I love the movie. And they said, really, why? And I said, because now I can stand up in front of a jury or sit on a radio show such as this and say, oh, the BDSM world, like 50 Shades of Grey. The people that have seen the movie are like, oh, okay. And so it's brought it into the mainstream, and people think that it's not, as odd as it once was. And that really helps when I'm standing in front of judges trying to tell them this doesn't matter. And so it's helped me a lot, so I'm grateful for it. But yes, the most common misconception in the BDSM world is that what it is that they do is going to affect asset division, liability division, 401k or retirement division, anything like that. And again, especially with the children. And I have been very successful in making sure that it hasn't. But I know a lot of lawyers, I've spoken to a few across the country who do kind of what I do, except in other jurisdictions. And unfortunately, even in some of the larger cities, and you would think, oh, well, it would be okay there. No, not so much. And so we still have a little ways to go with these three different alternative lifestyles before people truly wrap their heads around it and not use it as a hammer against people, unfortunately.
Right, so Sarah, I'm just thinking, because you're coming here, you're absolutely opening up my mind, and I'm learning some new things here. This is really interesting. So I'm thinking, when you put those three different lifestyles, stand them up against each other, and we look at the divorce rates of those three alternative lifestyles compared to heterosexual marriage, as we know that the divorce rates are sky high and increasing. Are there any official stats out there in comparison to what's classed as alternative lifestyles? Do people in divorce in alternative lifestyles and heterosexual marriages?
It's funny you should say that, and I like to say traditional marriage, just FYI, because people hear heterosexual marriage and they assume that there's no poly or BDSM going on, and that's
you see
not
how
true
much I know,
necessarily.
right? Okay,
Right.
thanks
But
for educating me.
that's perfectly fine. I understand. But in traditional, as they say in the particular groups I'm speaking about, vanilla lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people know that, everybody hears 50% divorce rate. No, 50% divorce rate was actually 20 years ago. It's actually started bumping up more towards 55% in traditional vanilla heterosexual pairings. And people seem to think that's because people just don't want to do it anymore. They would rather just live together and not be under the legal confines of marriage. And a lot of people are having fewer children. And so let's start with that statistic there. Let's say 55% in heteronormative, actually is a great word for that, heteronormative traditional vanilla marriages.
Right.
Now, as far as the LGBTQI community is concerned, it is my understanding with the last statistic I read, and I cannot cite the statistic, and I apologize in advance, that the divorce rate was only, if you can consider this only, 40% in that particular world. But then again, there's not a great deal of data. My undergrad's in microbiology, so I know all about data and science and all that, by the way. But I know there's not a lot of data in order to draw that statistic from just yet, because same-gendered marriage has only been legal for a few years now.
Right.
And so it's kind of hard to say, but of the divorces that have come, it's somewhere between 35 and 40%. And I attribute that to that particular demographic because it's just that they lived in a way for so long that it wasn't a possibility. So now the people who are actually getting married are, like I said before, in it to win it. They're there in order to keep the commitment and in order to keep the relationship alive. Or maybe there's a lot of people that have been living in a similar fashion for many years, and then they just made it legal. So why would they divorce at that point? And, there's tragic stories everywhere, but I find in that community, that's a lot of it. It's like, well, we've been living like this anyway, so we're just going to, get the legal protections behind it. In regards to the polyamorous community, I have not seen breakup statistics on that in particular. And if I had to guess, though, I would put them at about 40 to 45%, and let me tell you why that is. In that particular lifestyle, communication is key. Communication is preached from day one. You want to be polyamorous or you want to be non-monogamous is actually the biggest umbrella over polyamorous and relationship anarchists and all the other labels you could have, but non-monogamous. They have to have extreme amounts of communication. Because think about it, you're in a relationship with somebody, you have that trust level, well then somebody wants to go on a date or both of them wants to bring someone in or whatever the case may be. Everybody has to be very communicative. And communication, as we all know, is the basis of a good relationship, and it would likely keep divorce down. And so it makes sense that if something would work in a heteronormative vanilla relationship, why wouldn't it work, in a poly or non-monogamous type relationship? And as far as the BDSM world, piggybacking off of non-monogamy, there has to be a great deal of trust, communication, constant check-ins, protocols, rules, all of these other things established in a relationship where one person could likely be taking another person's life and limb in hand whenever they do these activities. And so since the level of trust and the level of communication and all of the rules are higher in a non-vanilla coupling, pairing, or grouping, then yes, absolutely. And I actually did read a statistic in the BDSM world from an organization called the National Coalition of Sexual Freedom. I work very closely with them on a lot of my cases. And I want to say that it came out, goodness gracious, I want to say a year ago, that 30% was the divorce rate of the couples that they had surveyed. And again, this is not, that's a demographic that's hard to get a hold of because people aren't willing to admit it. Sure. And so of the people that were polled, it seemed to be something between 30 and 35%. I know it was the lowest of all three of the demographics that we're speaking of today. And of course, it was asked, why do you think that's the case? And because of everything that I just mentioned, again, the honesty, the communication, the trust, and the rules, that seems to help a lot. And I just smile whenever people ask me about this and say, maybe there's something to be said for these lifestyles, and maybe people could learn from that.
Right. Certainly on a scale lined up next to each other, those three alternative lifestyles seems to be trumping the traditional way of living married life. So it's so fascinating. Thanks so much for sharing that with us, Sarah. So just as you're so welcome. Just as a reminder, folks, today's topic is divorce in the world of alternative lifestyles. And my guest today, Sarah Avraham, she's sharing some fantastic insights. It's absolutely opening up my mind, and I'm hoping that you, the listener, are learning something new as well. If not that, then certainly just confirming things that you knew already. So, Sarah, with today's topic in mind, and for those individuals who are out there listening in right now and wanting to know more, what's the most common but unknown pitfall that you'd like to bring to their attention today, no matter what situation they find themselves in, no matter how they feel?
That's a big one.
Yeah, I know.
That is an awful big question, especially considering the three demographics we're speaking of. Yeah. I think this is a good piece of advice no matter who is going through a divorce, but it is doubly true for the people who live this, alternative lifestyles where the future courts, opposing counsels, or guardian ad litems may not understand where they're coming from. Please don't air your dirty laundry. And I mean that on social media. I mean that in email. I mean, especially in writing, over the internet, text message, or even going and telling people certain things, because people can always be subpoenaed to testify. Be careful what it is that you spread out to the world, especially whenever you're angry at your ex or soon-to-be ex-partner or spouse, because you never know when it may come back and haunt you. Again, people in the LGBTQI community, they're facing a little more normal circumstances in regards to divorce because they have normal marriage, the legal same-gendered marriage. But that doesn't mean that you should go around and post pictures of, their hookup profile on Tinder or Grindr. Don't do that, especially if you find it and you're betrayed and, oh my goodness, they're not supposed to be doing that. Yeah, don't. And, again, with poly partners, don't, for goodness sakes, do not. And this goes for all three of the lifestyles we've been talking about. Don't out your partners, even if they're going to be your ex-partners, because that will inevitably come back and bite you.
You're right.
And, you're in a polyamorous relationship or non-monogamous relationship, and, you break up with a third party, and then you go to their parents and tell them, or you go to their job and tell them, or something like that. That's not good karma, first of all. Exactly. It's also, a dear friend of mine likes to say all the time, how you exit a relationship is just as significant as how you enter one. And, that's so absolutely true, especially if you have children. That's so important, because once you dedicated yourself to that child, that, you're all going to be in one another's lives until the day that one of you dies. And so that's a lifetime commitment, even if the commitment on paper or the commitment in living together or having a business together or whatever ends. And so it's good advice no matter if you're in a heteronormative monogamous relationship, but that vanilla, that applies to a lot of relationships, all relationships. Just keep it classy. I mean, really,
Yeah.
that's the best I can say.
It's a valid point, and it's so true. And I'm so glad that you brought up the topic of the children right there towards the end of that tip. It's a very reason, it's the sole reason why I started this series, Let's Talk Divorce, because the children, they are the ones who, in most cases, turn out to be the biggest victims in the case of a divorce. They're the ones that don't have a voice. And, I started this series to bring professionals like you onto the show in the hope that the information that you share, the insights you share, the experience that you share will inspire the listener to hopefully look at their situation differently, in that they put their children first, regardless of what situation they are in with their partner, regardless of whether they've been cheated on, regardless of how right they feel they are to be angry, to have a lot of stress when all of these things happen in front of the children. The children, they're powerless in that situation. I myself
Absolutely.
I was a child of divorce. My parents had a very volatile divorce. There was lots of fighting, lots of blood, lots of arguing, and I was only 8, 9 years old, and we're talking 1979, where the resources that are available today with collaborative and mediators and all kinds of different professionals out there, they didn't exist. And unfortunately, my parents unwittingly used myself and my younger brother as a tennis ball. Your father's this, your mother's that, and vice versa. And I grew up, and my younger brother, blaming ourselves for the breakup because we understood understood it any other way. So it took me at least 2 decades to deal with the head stuff, to deal with the low self-confidence that I had because of the breakup, because of the divorce, and blaming myself. The decisions I made in my young life, with my education and the direction I went, the kind of work I went, were all affected by that. So I think it's just really poignant that you bring up that point about the children. So for any listeners out there, whether you're living in an alternative lifestyle or whether you're living a traditional lifestyle, it's so important. As our guest today, Sarah, pointed out, that you put them first, because they are the hidden victims in all of this, and the repercussions of you acting out your anxieties, your anger in front of the children can have an effect on them for a lifetime. What do you have to say on that particular point, Sarah?
I say that I see it every day, and it makes me very sad, because I was a court-appointed special advocate, or training to be one, whenever I was in law school. And I have also been a state-certified mediator, and, of course, now I'm a divorce attorney. And I see it all the time, that people cannot seem to step out of their anger and themselves to realize what impacts they're going to have on the children. Because a lot of people like to use the expression, oh, kids are resilient, blah, blah, they will get past it, they will get over it, they might not even remember it. Yeah, no, they do. Yeah. Children are extraordinarily observant and intelligent, and they're sponges. From the time they are born until the time their brains stop developing at the age of 25. And anything that you do, it falls on your shoulders. So if your child does have to have therapy, or if they do live a life that you didn't want them to have, like, for instance, the examples you just gave, that rests squarely on the shoulders of the parent. I mean, it absolutely does. And I just cannot say enough that the victims of a divorce are always the children, always. Because you know what, folks? You can make more money. You can pay off debts. You can file bankruptcy if all else fails, if you want to get rid of liabilities. And, I say it all the time. You can always make more money. And you can't undo this sort of damage to your kids. So don't do that.
Exactly. So you've heard it, folks. You've heard it from Sarah. You've heard it from me. If you don't adhere, then I'm going to come and slap you upside the head. Your children always come first. Love them more than you hate your partner. Please do that.
That's right.
Right. So moving on then, Sarah, you've shared a lot of great information today, and I'm sure the listener will, at this stage, want to know a little bit more about you. So, briefly, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your background, your formal education, and your experience as it relates to the topic of family law and alternative lifestyles?
I'd be more than glad to. I graduated law school in 2010, and I was barred in 2011. And that was at Atlanta's John Marshall Law School. Hello, everyone. And my undergraduate degree was at Auburn University, and that was 10 years prior to that. Now, why was there a 10-year break? Because Sarah didn't know what she wanted to be when she grew up. And so I worked more than a few different professional level jobs, and I kept being beckoned back to law school. I received a postcard in the mail one day where I'd sent off for some information years, and I'm serious, years before. And I was at a crossroads of my life, and a couple of different things had converged. And I said, maybe I should give this a try. And I gave it a try, and here I am. In regards to my personal experience, I have several friends. I have friends that I consider family, and I have my own personal experience in all three of these alternative lifestyles. I identify as pansexual. I have been in polyamorous relationships before where there was more than one partners, and I have participated in the BDSM lifestyle. It is something that all three of those have been a part of my life for as long as I remember, and I say that, as a sexual being, not in my childhood, because that would be creepy and wrong. But, one or a piece of those have been a part of who I am. Again, since I was 18, 19, 20 years old. So I have 20 some odd years. I will not disclose my age because I'm a lady and from the South. So, we don't do that. But 20 some odd years experience in all three of these lifestyles. And I saw whenever I went into law school, even I started law school in 2006. I went part-time. And even in 2006, you would think, a lot of things had progressed, and they absolutely had. But this was before 50 Shades and gay marriage and same-gendered marriage. I hate calling it gay marriage, but same-gendered marriage. And the polyamorous community had really come out with these web specials or these television specials as well to highlight what it is they do and the fact that they're not, three-headed freaks and all this other stuff. And I saw that these communities were not being well served in the legal world, and people would just get ran over. And I said to myself, who's going to do it other than me? And so whenever I go and teach classes, I teach all across the country at different venues on this particular topic, whether it's BDSM in the law or poly in the law or just alternative lifestyles in the law. I tell everybody that I am the only open out practicing, because my mentor is retired, so I always say, practicing, licensed to practice in Georgia, attorney for alternative lifestyles in the state. Because there's a lot of people who will handle cases like this, but they're not out in their own lifestyle. And I will not out another person, but I will certainly out myself to let people know, hey, this is okay. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are so comfortable whenever they come to speak to me about their situation, is because I can relate on a personal level and on a professional level. And like I said, I would never out someone else, but here I just outed myself, which, that would require me being in the first place.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've got nothing but admiration and respect for you that you put your stake in the ground and drew a line in the sand and said, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do and these are the kind of people I'm going to represent. And I'm sure then over the years that you have built a reputation for yourself. I mean, we know you have a reputation because our research team have done their research, and that's why you're on the show. So I'm just so glad that you made that bold decision, because I'm sure it didn't come easy when you were first thought about it. Did it come easy or not? I can't make the assumption. No. Did you have to struggle with the thought for a while?
Considering the woefully horrible representation all three of these communities had, cross-referenced with the people that I loved in this community, people that I considered to be my family. Right. It really wasn't that hard of a decision. And I tell people all the time, a little expression from Alcoholics Anonymous, it may not be an easier way of life, but it's definitely a better one.
Gotcha.
And so that's what I tell people. It's I actually had someone ask me about this the other day about, do you tell people, how forward are you about your particular piece of heaven, so to speak, that I've staked my own personal claim on. Right. And I said, I don't go around throwing it in people's faces. It's one of those things, do straight people go around throwing the fact that they're straight in people's faces? Not too likely. But, like I said, the other day I had a guardian ad litem. I was talking to them on the phone, and it makes it so much easier for me not to be shocked. Whenever he said, oh, well, they're into this stuff and they're on this website and all that. And I said, okay. And he was like, wait, you knew? Yes. Well, oh. And he was sort of dumbfounded that I took it so well, because I could almost sense a little bit of judgmental going on there. And I was like, and it made it easier for him to think that it was normal and that it could just be breezed over by me being so nonplussed about it. And so, my personal experiences along with my professional experiences mesh really well and offer my clients a unique perspective and certainly a good weapon for them in court. At least that's what I tell them when I do, my pitch to get them to pay me.
Oh, this is a fascinating discussion, Sarah. I wish I could speak for another hour with you. I'm sure we'd still be only scratching the surface of the insights that you could share with us. However, we are slowly approaching the end of the show. So at this stage, I'd just like you just to picture the kinds of individuals who come to you for your guidance, and they're wanting to dig a little bit deeper into the topic of divorce in the world of alternative lifestyles. Now, with that picture in mind then, Sarah, what final thoughts would you like to leave those people before we move on to our last question for today?
The absolute piece of advice?
Yes, absolutely.
I think we've already covered that because we were talking about the children.
Right.
And we were talking about the worst thing that they could do, so a combination of the two. Keep your arguments to yourself because that later could be evidence. Right. So do not give the other side any more evidence than what they could possibly discover later in the forms of social media, witnesses to be subpoenaed, et cetera, et cetera. And then combine that with the advice about the kids. If you've got kids, don't be, quote unquote, that guy. Just don't be that guy. Keep your children in mind and keep them protected as much as possible whenever they're going through, because they go through the divorce with you. It's not just you. It's not just you and your spouse. It's the children as well, and keep them protected because whenever you decided to bring them into this world, you swore an oath, hopefully, to yourself at least, if not to everyone else in your higher power, that you were going to keep them safe. Well, those duties don't stop just because you're not getting along with the other parent or parents anymore. And so, best piece of advice, all the way around, don't be that guy. Nobody likes that guy. Don't be that guy.
Fantastic. So, Sarah, finally, if there is somebody out there who does want to know more about divorce in the world of alternative lifestyles, how can they contact you? What's the easiest way?
Easiest way would be my website, which is Avraham, A-V-R-A-H-A-M, so Abraham with a V, the Hebrew spelling, avrahamlaw.com. And you can also email me, Sarah, the traditional spelling, S-A-R-A-H, at avrahamlaw.com. You can also take my name and find me on Twitter and Facebook. I have a professional page. And, those would be the best ways to do it. My website, that's easy. I'm actually relatively easy to find.
Okay, folks, that's all we have time for today. Again, that was Sarah Avraham. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing so generously with us today. You have certainly demonstrated without a doubt and 100% hands down that you are a true educator and advocate for your client success. So thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be here. And thank you for listening, everyone.
You are so welcome, Sarah. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to you, our listener. Thank you for joining us on this. Yeah, it's been a very interesting and insightful, informative discussion with one of the, I hesitate to call you a family law attorney now after speaking with you today. Your experiences are just so vast and so wide. So I will just say with the top alternative lifestyle attorney. I don't even know what to call you anymore. You're
I'll
so
take
specific.
it. That's
You'll
pretty
take
much
that
how
one?
I market myself.
Okay,
Yes, I will
fantastic.
take that.
The one and only alternative lifestyle attorney in the Atlanta, Georgia area today. So again, remember her name is Sarah Avraham. Remember to check her out. Give her a call, send her an email. Whatever you do, I am 100% convinced that you're going to be in good hands. So that's it, folks. Again, my name is Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading family law professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.